Welcome everyone to our first Facebook Live town hall, we'll call it. We have been, as many of you know, traveling around the state for 17 months and a week now and have met tens of thousands of Minnesotans, gotten the chance to answer questions and look people in the eye and say, here's what we're going to do for the state of Minnesota. But we thought we'd try something different. We thought we'd try something new and reach out to people who maybe we haven't been able to meet in person. So this is one medium, and we're going to try this today, and answer as many questions as we can. We only have 15 minutes because we are heading up to Duluth, and I'm told I have to be in the RV at 12:15. But send in your questions, type in your questions, and we'll answer as many as we can. I know that if they come in fast, I may be only able to grab a few of them, but feel free to answer questions. So the first question I see over here is, what do you mean when you say choice for healthcare? Isn't it going to cost us more? And that is that's one of the problems that we have right now, is that premiums are so high for people, whether you're young or old, sick or healthy, because of what the federal government has done. Because of MNsure, we've seen premiums just skyrocket in this state, frankly, bankrupting some people who are in what's called the individual market. And by choice, I mean forcing more competition into the system against the current insurance companies and giving people more options. And there are a lot of ways we can do that. You can encourage employees to self-insure. You can allow people to buy across state lines regionally here if the federal government can't figure that out. You can allow small employers to pool their resources together, all things that are really difficult to do. We can make that easier. But I have to add to that something that's very important, because you see a lot of false TV ads out there about what will happen with healthcare if I'm governor. None of them are true. We're not going to leave people behind in this state. We never have, and we never will, whether I'm governor or anyone else is. We have always covered pre-existing conditions, or at least for the last 35 years in Minnesota. That's just a value we have as Minnesotans, and we will continue to. I've always been consistent about that. I've got family members who have pre-existing conditions. So we're not going to leave them behind. And people who can't afford insurance, Minnesota has always been more generous than any state in the nation to make sure that they have coverage. We'll continue to do that when I'm governor. That's an important piece of what I talk about. But then for those who are paying for their own insurance or paying for part of their insurance with their employer, we're going to make sure they have more options, because that is the only way we can bring down the costs that are just crippling a lot of Minnesotans. Other questions? Any other questions that people? Oh, I got to move down on my little. Okay, just some comments about Obamacare. Let's see what else we got here. Can the IRS be abolished? Well, that's a great question. That, unfortunately, it's a federal agency, and so that wouldn't have anything to do with the governor. I can tell you we have a Department of Revenue in Minnesota, and one thing I can promise you with the Department of Revenue and every other state agency is they are going to be more accountable to people, and we're going to change the culture and the attitude in our state agencies, whether it's revenue or the DNR or the Department of Commerce or MPCA, to actually serving people, because we seem to have it backwards these days, where at least some of the employees in our agencies seem to believe that people serve them and their job is to control us and direct us as opposed to serve us. And that needs to change. That is a big culture change, but it's something I will focus on every single day as your governor. Let's see what else we got. Medical marijuana for veterans, and then the bigger question of legalization of marijuana. I have always been a supporter of medical marijuana. In fact, I supported it 4 years ago when many Republicans and Democrats did not. I think that as long as it can help people who need help, we should do it. I'm actually open to expanding what it is allowed for right now, because we have a pretty restrictive system. I do not support recreational legalization of marijuana. And I got a strong liberty bent to me, so that's a hard one. But I have taken a close look at what's happened in other states, and there are tremendous costs to that. And right now, at least for me, the cost versus the benefit doesn't quite work out. I realize that culture is changing. It may pass me by on this one, but that's where I am right now, at least. Let's see what else. Sanctuary state. Can you explain what a sanctuary state is and how you will address this? So this is a fundamental difference between Tim Walz, my DFL opponent, and me. A sanctuary state, there are a few of them in the country, none in the upper Midwest. He wants to be a sanctuary state. I think that's a terrible direction for Minnesota. And what a sanctuary state means is that we forbid our law enforcement officers in the state of Minnesota to cooperate in any way with the federal government when it comes to enforcing immigration laws in the state. Sometimes my opponent also will say, well, we don't want our own officials to be enforcing immigration laws. And I couldn't agree more. Of course we don't. That's not their job. But it is the job of the federal government, and we shouldn't be creating essentially a safe space for any illegal immigrant to come here. We have to worry first about the people that we have in Minnesota. We have a lot of needs here. People pay very high taxes, and we are having trouble just providing some of the most basic services. I look at our nursing home workers in Minnesota. We pay them less than McDonald's, and that's wrong. And to argue that we need to open the borders of the state to people who are not here legally, and then they move on to the system, some of them may be criminals because that's what a sanctuary state says. That's not the right direction for Minnesota at all. Sanctuary cities, I don't believe in sanctuary cities either. So Jason asks a question about Minnesota being the least tax-friendly state in the USA. What changes to the Minnesota tax code are most important to you? So we are, every study you look at, we are either the highest tax state or one of the handful of highest tax states in the country. And I don't think that's a positive thing for us. We're never going to be a low tax state. If people want bargain basement, they'll move to Mississippi. Minnesota's never going to be that, but we don't have to be one of the highest in the country. And for me, the first tax that I will look at after tax conformity with the federal government will be our income tax, because that affects anybody who is working. And we have our top rate, which was created, a new top rate was just created a few years ago. It's 85% higher than the average top rate in the country, which is bad because it chases out wealth, it chases out investment, it chases out job creators. But a bigger problem for me is the bottom tier, our lowest income tax tier in Minnesota. It applies to anyone who makes over $10,300 a year, so pretty much everybody who works. Our lowest tier is higher than the highest tier in 23 other states. So that means we're not just taxing to death CEOs in Minnesota, we're taxing to death school teachers and mechanics and bartenders and childcare providers and people who are serving coffee. Everybody is overtaxed, and that's where I will actually start. The income tax, starting at the bottom rate that applies to everybody, and then work my way up. After that, we're one of the very few states in the country that taxes Social Security benefits, which is just devastating to some of our seniors who are on a fixed income. And I don't think we should be doing that. That money's already been taxed. Those are the two places that I would start. Fixing the DMV. We have unfortunately in the past 8 years come to expect that some of our state agencies are just not going to perform. So you look at MNsure, which was an utter disaster and still isn't working right. And you look at the fact that we've had child care fraud, $100 million, which was stolen from people who needed that service, and government didn't do anything about it. We look at elder abuse, where we've got all kinds of problems. And then the DMV, the MNlars system, if you haven't heard about it. And essentially now for a couple of years, we've spent tens of millions of dollars, and we still haven't figured out how to issue a license tabs. We've got people waiting for months to get license tabs or have their car registered. There's no reason for that. Almost every state in the country does this better than us, and some of them do it really well. So first and foremost, whenever we have these new systems that we want to put in place, let's look to other states, let's figure out who's doing it the best, and then talk to them about how they do it. And if that doesn't work, or if we can't figure it out that way, then I truly believe we need to bring in people from the private sector for these huge IT projects that aren't working over and over again. They're not working in Minnesota. Let's bring in people from the outside who know how to do this professionally, and then hold them accountable. Because right now, internally, this is obviously something government doesn't do very well. And we just keep doing it and no one is held accountable. So yes, we will fix the DMV. I don't know for sure what the answer is, other than I will bring in people from the outside who can figure that out for us. We will pay them for it if they succeed. That's how it's supposed to work. Mining, how do you, I'm sorry, we're falling way behind here. I'm talking too much. Mining, how do you plan to get the projects up and running? I live on the range and I'm very frustrated with the progress. I will be an advocate for mining, whether it's copper or nickel mining, whether it is taconite mining or sand mining down in southern Minnesota, as long as we can do it in an environmentally friendly way, and I truly believe we can. We have a set of regulatory requirements in place, and unfortunately, the current administration has been trying to slow walk those requirements. I'm not going to shortchange that. You move through the process, and as governor, I will make sure we move through the process. Don't throw up new roadblocks based on a political ideology, and actually advocate to get this thing done, because it is tremendous jobs in a part of the state that is desperate for really good private sector jobs. So I'm going to be an advocate for that, because I truly believe, based on what we have in place, we can do this in a way that doesn't hurt or risk the environment. Let's see. How would you advise Hennepin County not to have so many construction projects going on before one ends? And that's not just Hennepin County. That is, we're seeing this all over the state, particularly in the metro. I live in the West Metro. This year's been a little bit better. Last year, you couldn't go anywhere in the West Metro because they did all these huge projects at the same time without thinking through how is this going to actually affect people's lives. And when I talk about the arrogance of some of our state agencies, within some of our state agencies, this goes directly to that. Let's make sure we are planning these projects, because I want road projects. I don't think we're focusing enough on roads in this state right now. But let's do them in a way that doesn't make people's lives almost impossible for a matter of the 5-6 months that we actually, or 7 months that we do these projects. And again, that goes to the culture and the philosophy of what is our job. Our job in government is to serve the people who pay our salaries, to serve the taxpayers. And so let's make sure the way we're doing it is a way that doesn't make your lives actually more difficult when we're trying to accomplish something positive. 2 more minutes. Okay, let's see. Healthcare, we talked about that already. Sanctuary states, we talked about that already. Let's see. Red flag laws. Do you support Walz's plan to enact red flag laws where an individual has their firearm seized based on the accusation of someone else without their day in court? I believe in due process. Due process is absolutely critical to me. And if I'm accused of something, I haven't been, but if I am, I want to be able to respond to that before a court or the public makes an opinion about me. And especially when you're talking about a constitutional right in the Second Amendment, I don't believe that anybody should have their guns taken away without their day in court to actually respond to that. So no. Let's see. I see another one about healthcare, about pre-existing conditions. So let me reiterate that, because I mentioned it earlier, but there's a couple of groups that support Tim Walz that have spent close to $3 million on ads. You've all seen them because they're littering the airwaves. And essentially what they say is Jeff Johnson's going to take away coverage for pre-existing conditions. It's a lie. It's been proven to be a lie. There was a fact check on it that gave it a D-, which I thought was generous. But they said that particular allegation was just simply false. I have said from the start of this campaign and campaigns in the past that I will always make sure as governor that we guarantee affordable coverage to those with pre-existing conditions. And again, I have family members, and that is a value that I think we all share in this state. Minnesota is better at taking care of people who need help, our most vulnerable citizens, than any state in the country. And I won't allow that to change. So you're going to continue to see those commercials because they've polled it, and they know that even though it's not true, it'll bring down another candidate's numbers. That apparently is just the new rules that we have. You can lie as long as it helps you win, but it's not true. And I can say that with great confidence that we'll continue to guarantee affordable coverage with everyone with a pre-existing condition in the state, just as Minnesota has for the last 35 years. So with that, I'm sorry, there's about 40 more questions to answer. We're heading to Duluth. We'll do this again, and we'll probably do it again soon, and just keep trying to answer your questions. Thank you all for being on. JohnsonforGovernor.org. We would love to have your support and help. Thanks.